Hey, good morning, everybody. It is 9:46 on Tuesday, September 6th, 2011. And I was just checking some of the websites, Sonic-related websites that I go on. And one person was asking me in a private message to give him my ideas of a cinematic Sonic the Hedgehog SatAM movie. Give him my ideas and thoughts. Wow, that's really interesting. He says these are based on some Ben Hurst idea. Well, yeah, Ben Hurst no doubt wanted to bring it to the big screen. I truly remember reading about that. But if you want my ideas definitely have a lot of SatAM in them, but they also kind of merge with a little bit of Archie Comics. You see, because the thing is this about doing a Sonic's theatrical film, and I'm not talking about a fan-made film like Eddie LeBron's doing, and apparently he's doing a good job on it. I'm not talking about that kind of film. I'm talking about a film that's theatrical, made by, not made by, but distributed by a major studio, has a director or somebody behind the helm to do it. And the question is, though, who would I want in those positions? Well, first of all, let me say this. Let's talk about what I would like to see in the movie. If I was to do a SatAM based movie and probably throw in some elements of the Archie Comics version of Sonic, because I know that's the direction people would want to go. As much as some people may not like to hear this, I'd want to do sort of and I know this could upset people, I'd sort of like to do maybe a reboot, if you will. Not exactly a reboot. Not a reboot to where I change origins and stuff like that. No, I keep the origins and the backgrounds of the characters the same, just as they were when the series, when they first got created, when SatAM first got created, when Archie Comics started working on those same backgrounds and origins and all that. I'd keep that all the same. I'd keep it all the same, folks. But what I'm saying, though, is kind of lately, well, what I'm saying is that in the past decade, if you will, every time a movie comes out theatrically, whether it's live action, CGI, 2D animated, or whatever, and it's based on a franchise that's been around for almost 20 years, over 20 years, 30 years, whatever, it's always a retelling of how it all began. So what I'm saying is this. If I was, in all honesty to God, if I was to see a SatAM theatrical movie made, there's no doubt I would like to see it sort of a retelling of how the freedom fighters came to be. How they came to be in this war with Robotnik. I would have it begin sort of like in flashbacks of how Robotnik took over. Kind of really show the effect it had on the freedom fighters as kids. How they had to escape with Rosie, the nanny, and a few other grown-ups into the hideaway of Knothole. Have them safely do that. And basically focus on how it individually affect each and every one of the main characters. Go through those kind of things. Go through the flashbacks, like I said, of how Robotnik took over, how he deceived and lied to and used the Kingdom of Acorn to get what he wanted. Probably do a flashback to where he roboticizes Bunny Rabbit partially. Show how that affects her personally. Things like that. Kind of start it out in flashbacks. Sort of do it like that, if you will. Because I remember there was one movie years ago where we started with a flashback and then we went back into present day. And I'll talk about, in that movie I'm talking about, let's just say that movie goes by a letter and a number, X 3, if you get what I'm saying. But that's how I'd like to see it done. Something like that. Have some flashbacks on how Robotnik took over and how the war began and how individually it personally affects the characters. Especially, let's say you have Bunny in a flashback getting roboticized. How does it affect her? Because of what, partially roboticized. How does it affect her? That's what I would like to see. That's what I would like to see. I'd like to see something like that. Sort of a retelling of how it began, in a flashback, sort of how it began, and then go like into present day to where, they're fighting the war with Robotnik and stuff like that. That's sort of how I would like to see it. Now, as far as the voice actors and actresses, well, the voice actors and actresses could vary. Now, there's no doubt in my mind Jolie White and Kat Sushi would definitely return to do the voices of Sonic and Sally. No doubt in my mind. But Christine Calavici, or whatever her name is, who did Bunny Rabbit, as many of you know, has long retired, from what I understand, from voice acting. So, who would I pick to voice Bunny Rabbit? Who would be the perfect candidate? Well, there's so many females out there that would be perfect for that candidatization. But if I wanted to put a little bit of superstar power into this film, I'd put... Well, this is going to be hard to believe. But if I wanted to put some superstar voice power, maybe a small one, I'd put maybe... And you may say I'm crazy for this. You may say I'm out of my mind for suggesting this person, but I would go with Taylor Swift. Honest to God, I'd go with Taylor Swift, not just because I'm a fan of her music, but I think because she has the right voice to be Bunny Rabbit. I truly believe that. Now, I know a lot of you may say, well, we have other choices, like that girl that played Rogue in the X-Men movies. Yeah, she's a good choice. And there's others out there too, but I would go with Taylor. There's no doubt about it. I'd have to go with her. Now, the other characters, like I said, like Rob Paulson, I believe, would return for Antoine. Rotor, I believe they'd get Clam Clark again to do him. William Wyndham, I believe, if they bring in Uncle Chuck, would definitely probably come back to do him. But again, you also want to add in some elements from the games, right? Well, if I was to bring in some game characters, one game character I would bring in is Amy Rose. But I wouldn't bring Amy Rose in as we see her now. No. I'd start her off the way she was when we first saw her in the games and in the comics. And who would I have voice her? I don't know. Nancy Cartwright, maybe? I don't know. Or just maybe have the same girl that's voicing her right now in the games and voiced her in Sonic X. Bring her in and do it. That'd be good. But again, I'd kind of want it to... But again, overall, I'd want this sort of be like a retelling. And these are just who I would choose. Now, as for Robotnik, well, it all depends on how the movie would be made. If the movie was 2D animated with some CGI backgrounds and effects, then most definitely get Jim Cummings. There's no doubt about that. Or if it was CGI, again, get Jim Cummings. No doubt about it. But then again, what if it's live action and the Robotnik's live action like Eddie LeBron's Robotnik's going to be? Sorry about that. Mouth touched the mic. But who would I have? Well, again, you'd want to have a little bit of superstar power in there. A little bit. Not much. But just somebody that would play a good role. Now, there's a lot of well-rounded actors out there, if you will, that could play Robotnik. There's no doubt about that. But me, honestly, I'd have to go with somebody that could really make Robotnik as vicious and as evil as we see him in the cartoon, as he's portrayed at times in the comic. I'd want somebody to make him that evil and that intimidating. But again, The question is, who could do that? Well, there's a lot of candidates out there. Now, who would be the best candidate for it? Well, honestly, if he's still acting and he still needs a good lift, if you will, because sometimes you got to give an actor the right role to really bring him back onto the map. But honestly, I'd go with John Goodman. Honest to God, I would. Now, you may say to yourself, well, that's ridiculous. There's no way Goodman could do it. That's true, but you think about it, well-rounded, he's got the potential. Then again, though, there's Kevin James. I know he's a comedian, but guess what? You give him the right kind of role, I guarantee you he could be sinister. And then, of course, I know there's ways of doing makeup and all that, make yourself fatter and all that. I mean, they did that with Tim Allen in the Santa Claus movies. So if it's not Goodman and it's not Kevin James, who else would be perfect? Who would be the perfect candidate to make Robotnik look, intimidating and evil? Should this movie be live action? Well, I think I know of one, but I don't know if anybody else would go with it. I think I know one, but I don't think anybody else would go with it. And the person I'm talking about, no, not me. No. The person I'm talking about, in all honesty, because I truly think, because he's done it before. He's really showed emphasis in being a villain before. When he did the first Iron Man movie, I really think he could pull it off again. And I'm talking about Jeff Bridges. No doubt. Jeff Bridges could definitely pull off a Robotnik. I mean, look, he's really put himself back on the map lately with Iron Man, Tron Legacy, True Grit. He's got that potential. And yeah, it may take some makeup on the body and all that to really get him into that Robotnik, figure. But he would be perfect for Robotnik if you couldn't get someone like Goodman and James to kind of bring out that villain side of them. He'd be perfect. Now, as far as Snively goes, well, Snively's a different story. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that you could pick for Snively, but I'd definitely go with an unknown actor or somebody that's making a name for themselves on Broadway or on television. I can't really think of anybody right now. Maybe you guys can. But that's who I'd go with. Someone that was unknown that could be Robotnik's lackey, his sidekick. Now, who would I have? Now, how would I prefer it anyway, overall, though? Well, honestly, I wouldn't mind it either way. If it was done right with live action, melded and merged with CGI, just like they've done with Transformers, and I know some people don't like hearing that. Even the Smurfs, and I know some people don't like hearing that. I think it would really have potential as a live action film with the CGI blending. There's no doubt in my mind. But again, like I said, I think it would work either way. I mean, CGI, honestly, I'd go with the people that did the CGI for Final Fantasy. Have Sega work with them, or have Sega work with people at Blue Sky, or Image. The people that did the 2007 TMNT movie. DreamWorks maybe, which is a long shot. But I would go, honestly, if I wanted to do CGI, with Square Enix, the people that did the Final Fantasy series and worked with Sony to do Final Fantasy Spirits Within. Or I'd go with Blue Sky because they do beautiful animation. You could see, if you don't believe me, watch Rio. You'll know what I'm talking about. They do beautiful animation. Or go with Image. Or Imagine, whatever it's called, to do the animation. To work with Sega on the CGI animation. Because it would work out perfectly. Work with Sega, dig the people in charge, because it would work out perfectly. There's no doubt about it. Work with Sega, Dick Entertainment, Archie Comics. Have either one of them, if not all three, work with either Square Enix, work with Blue Sky, work with Image, and I guarantee you'd have a great CGI animation. Especially, honestly, my top candidate, I love the CGI in Final Fantasy. The Spirits Within. I love the CGI that they did in TMNT. It was okay. It was good. But honestly, the CGI they did in Rio, folks, is unbelievable. That Blue Sky did for Rio is unbelievable. If a top candidate, honestly, for Sega, Archie Comics, and Dick Entertainment to work with, if a SatAM movie, a theatrical SatAM movie was to be made, I'd definitely go with Blue Sky. There's no doubt about it. I'd definitely go with Blue Sky. Sony Pictures Animation, yeah, it's a good choice too. But I definitely more so go with Blue Skies because they do beautiful animation. Again, you don't believe me? Look at Rio. Now, again, like I said, though, I believe either way it'd work out perfectly. 2D animation-wise, I'd try to get Dick Entertainment again, or at least get some company out there that does good feature animation film for 2D. But honestly, either way would work out perfectly. Again, you want to do CGI. Top candidate, in my opinion, right now is Blue Sky Animation. There's no doubt about that. Now, as far as who would I want directing this film? Wow, who would I want directing? Well, first of all, who would I want to write the film? Well, but personally, the person I'd want to have writing the film would be somebody that would stay true to the legacy that Ben Hurst wanted and kind of help bring the elements of both SatAM, mostly SatAM, and bits and pieces of Archie Comics and the games into the movie as time went on. Someone that really could understand these characters. That's the kind of writer I would want. Someone that would keep the legacy alive, stay true to what Ben Hurst wanted. But again, also figure, well, Ben Hurst was still around, still alive, he'd probably add in elements from the comics because that's when, honestly, that's when mostly a lot of people are getting the SatAM fix right now with all new adventures. I hate to say that, but it's true, and I think a lot of people would admit to that. But that, honestly, I'd want somebody that would stay true to the writing. So, and honestly, if he was still writing movies, and maybe he is, maybe I'd go with Richard Donner. Who knows? Maybe I'd go with him. Now, I could be wrong, but honestly, that's who I'd go with. But now the directors. Wow. What directors would I get for this film? Who would I want to direct this film? Be the overall person in charge? A lot of names have come up. The top name that's come up the most has been James Cameron because of his work on Avatar, and as of yesterday, if you watched on Lifetime, his work on Titanic. So that's a top name when it comes to people they would like to see direct, because he does great directing, great storytelling. Heck, I'd want him to write the film too, if that was the point. There's your writer right there. Have him write and direct it. But directing-wise, his name's come up as the top candidate. In my opinion, I totally agree. He's got a great resume. He could definitely do a great job. But then again, there's two other people that do great jobs as well. And they've had experience so far with adapting live-action animation and comic book-related adaptations into movies. That's Brian Spencer and Sam Raimi. I know that sounds crazy, but those are the two other candidates down below. Brian Spencer and Sam Raimi. The people that did the X-Men and the Spider-Man films, those would be the two other candidates. Now, if I really wanted to make this a big production, something special, and that everybody of all every Sonic fan base could enjoy, then I'd want two directors, a director and a co-director. My co-director, honestly, here's what I would do. My main director would be James Cameron. He would be my main director and my main writer. My co-director, someone that would step in for him, fill his shoes if, let's say, he's not there or he's doing something else, Brian Spencer. No doubt about that. I know some people may not like that decision, but that would be my co-director. My producers, well, definitely producing-wise, I want to reach out to Steven Spielberg. I would, because he's had experience. He can really help out and help develop the story in the way it's traditionally supposed to be seen. So I'd reach out to Steven Spielberg, honestly, because of his resume. I'd reach out to Steven Spielberg to be my producer. And my co-producer, well, that'd be totally up to whoever I could trust. Whoever I feel Steven could trust. And who knows? But honestly, the three top people I'd want directing, co-directing, and producing this film would be James Cameron. Co-directing, the co-director should be Brian Spencer. And honestly, the producer should be Steven Spielberg. Again, some of you may not agree with those choices. Some of you may, but that's who I would go with. Now, one of the other things somebody brought up during this little topic on the Saturday Morning Sonic forums is somebody said some people have said they look at the SatAM franchise, the SatAM part of the franchise, the Saturday Morning Sonic part of the franchise, I should say. They look at it and they say that if a movie was to be made, they look at it as being a trilogy. That's what they see. And honestly, I do agree. I agree it could be a trilogy. And honest to God, I would keep everybody I have that I just mentioned from whatever art style it's going to be done in, to the voice actors and actresses, to the directors, the producer, the writer. I'd keep everybody on board. I'd sign them all to long-term contracts if these were going to be trilogies. I'd sign them onto these contracts and say, okay, here's as much as we're going to offer. We want you to stay on for all three movies, do all three movies with us. I'd do my best to work hard with them to do it. I'd bend over backwards if I had to keep all the people I wanted on board. Now, I do agree, like I said, it would be a trilogy. The second one, because according to what Ben Hurst has said, from what people have reported, I would start slowly bringing in more characters from the games and from the movies. Not games, but from the games and the comics. Like I said, the only game character I would probably have in there, besides Sonic and Tails and Robotnik, of course, the only other game character I would have in the first movie, sort of introduce her towards like the middle, like in the middle towards the end, or the middle towards the middle end of the film. Like say 2.5/4 of the way, or 2.5/4 of the way through the film. The only game character, like I said, I would have in the first film would be Amy Rose. But if I was to do a second film in a trilogy, I'd slowly start to bring in other characters. Now, of course, we'd have Robotnik back, and this time I would follow sort of an adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2. That's what I would do, and this would slowly, in this one, introduce Shadow and Rouge. That's what I would do. I'd have Shadow and Rouge introduced in the second film, because I would have the second film be about Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure 2, that is. That's what I would have. Now, who would I have voice Shadow and Rouge? Well, I'd have Jason Griffin, who did Shadow and Sonic's voice in Sonic X. I'd have Jason Griffin come in and do Shadow's voice. And I'd have the woman that did My Valentine's voice and Rouge's voice in Sonic X to do Rouge's voice in the film. And of course, I'd also introduce Knuckles into the film. I would. I'd have Knuckles get introduced into the film as well. And I'd have him voiced by Dan Green. There's no doubt about it. But again, I'd keep all the other same actors and voice actors and actresses, the same person if it's live action doing Robotnik. I'd have the same directors and co-producers and stuff together. I'd keep them all together for that. But my honest opinion, if the SatAM movie was to become a franchise, a trilogy franchise, then I'd have the second SatAM movie based on Sonic Adventure. I know some people may not agree with that, but it's true, and I would slowly bring it, and in that one I'd probably bring in Shadow, Knuckles, and Rouge. And maybe Julie Sue. Because, Knuckles has to have a companion. But who would voice Julie Sue? That would be the question. Well, of course you need a new voice actress, so Julie Sue, I'd probably go with Scarlett Johansson, the girl that's doing the Black Widow in Avengers, in the Avengers, if you will. I'd have her do the voice of Julie Sue. That's just my opinion. But I'd have two characters from the games and three characters from the game, one from the comic, introduced in the second film. I'd give, and all the other characters from the comics like the minor characters, like saying Mina, Ash, Jeffrey Hershey, I'd have them slowly introduced in small cameos and stuff, just like they did in the X-Men films and all that, and go from there. Then as the third film goes, this would be the final battle. This would be the final confrontation of good versus evil. And I would have Robotnik totally out of the equation. Honest to God, I hate to say this, but I would actually have Robotnik defeated and maybe even killed off at the end of the second film. And if it was to be a trilogy, I would follow in the Shadow story arc and have him face the Black Army and Black Doom. That's who I would have for this story, for the final movie. Have them in a final confrontation with the Black Army, aka and Black Doom. Boom. That's what I would do. Now I know again some of you may not agree with that, but that's what I would do. And then for the third and final film, I would introduce the Chaotix into the group. Well, actually, I should have the Chaotix introduced during the second film. But then during the third film, I would have Blaze get introduced. Believe it or not, I'd have Blaze and Silver introduced, because this is the way I would start the third and final film. Because you see, like I mentioned earlier, I would start the first film sort of a flashback of how Robotnik took over and stuff, right? Well, the third film, I'd have it start in the future with Silver and Blaze are, and wondering how the world came to be the way it is, and then have them kind of go through time. I know that sounds crazy, but have them go through time to the present day when the Black Army is about to invade, and have them align themselves with Sonic, Sally, the Freedom Bunny, Sonic, Sally, Bunny, the Freedom Fighters, the Knuckles, Julie Sue, the Chaotix, Shadow and Rouge, who would be part of this as well. I'd have Silver and Blaze show up to help them out, so that what happens in the future because of what happened in the future would be prevented. Now I know you're saying, I know some of you will say, the main villain for that should be Mephiles. Yeah, he should be. And maybe I throw him in there as being like the guy in charge, the guy that brought the Black Army and Black Doom to the universe. I'd probably have him be that guy. But again, that's how I would do the third film. I'd have Blaze, I'd have Silver get introduced out of the games, and then as far as SatAM and the Archie comics goes, this would be the real fun twister. Heroes on the hero side, like I said, I'd have Blaze and Silver joining everybody, and then from the comics / SatAM, here's the real kicker: I'd have Loop That's right, Loop of the Wolf Pack and Jeffrey and Hershey from the comics be introduced as the newest allies. That's right, I'd have Jeffrey and Hershey get a bigger role, have them kind of be like in the final battle, and I'd have Loop there as well. I'd have her come in as a representative of the Wolfpack Nation saying, you know, they're here to help or something like that. I'd have her come in. Now, as far as the voices of Jeffrey and Hershey, I don't know who I'd go with. Probably some unknowns, if you will, maybe. Maybe some unknowns here and there. I'd probably go with the woman that did the voice of Linda in Rio to do Hershey. And maybe, I don't know, maybe some Austrian television star to do the voice of Jeffrey. And as far as Loop goes, I'd probably keep that Susan lady or Susan or Sandra lady that did her voice in the SatAM cartoon. But honestly, honest to God, it wouldn't be all at once. It'd be very slowly throughout the third film. And they don't always have to have a role throughout the entire film. We know that. They just have to show up and be a part of it. If you watch the third film, if you watch X3 and all that, you kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about. But anyway, what I'm saying is that I think, honestly, in my opinion, that's what I'd like to see done. I'd like to see Hershey, Jeffrey, and Loop, along with Silver and Blaze, brought in for the final film. And the battle does not just save the world, but to save all space and time against the Black Army, Black Doom, and maybe Maleficus. And Maleficus, or whatever his name is, I'd have him voiced by the same person that voiced him in the games. And Black Doom, probably the same person as well. But again, that's how I would do it if the SatAM movie, the SatAM side of the Sonic franchise was to be turned into a trilogy of movies. I would keep the SatAM element, make that a major focus on all three, but very slowly bring in all the some of the characters and elements from the games and the comic books, slowly bring those in as well. Like I said, the only game character besides Sonic, Tails, and Robotnik that I would have in the first film would be Amy Rose. Then the second film, I'd bring in Knuckles, Julie Sue, the Chaotix, Rouge, and Blaze. Then the third film, I bring in Loop, Jeffrey St. John, Hershey, Silver, and Blaze. And I'd also have the final enemy not be Robotnik, but have it be Maleficus, and the Black Doom and the Black Army. That's what I would like to see. Again, in all honesty, I definitely would like to see a trilogy, and that's how I'd like to see the trilogy go. And again, like I said, I'd like to keep the same people doing the voice acting and actors from the first film. I'd like to keep all of them. I'd like to bring in some new, like I said, bring in some new people to do voice acting and all that. I'd like to keep the same people writing and directing. In other words, James Cameron, Brian Spencer, and Steven Spielberg. I'd like to keep them on board. And the people I would like to see distribute this movie, the studio, in all honest to God, the people I'd like to see distribute this movie, 20th Century Fox. Because they've had success when it comes to stuff like this. So I'd go with 20th Century Fox to distribute this film. That's who I'd like to see. So, those are my thoughts on what I would like to see cinematic-wise, theatrical-wise, of a SatAM movie. And again, I would definitely go with wanting to see it as a trilogy as well. Now, again, I know, like I said, some of you may agree with what I said. Some of you may not. That's okay. That's your opinion. But that's what I would like to see. And that's all I'm going to say. Give me your thoughts down below. Tell me what you guys thought of what I mentioned. I'll link down. I'll put the link to the topic from the Saturday Morning Sonic forums in here. Tell me what you guys think, though, of my ideas. And I will talk to y'all later.